Hello and welcome back to Lingering Light, your quiet corner of the world where we slow down enough to actually hear our own hearts beat. I am so truly glad you found your way to us tonight. Go ahead and kick off those shoes, pour yourself something warm, maybe that tea you've been saving for a special occasion, and let's settle in for a conversation about the most precious currency you own. It's not your home equity, and it's certainly not your 401k. It's your time. Tonight, we are opening the letters of Lucius Annaeus Seneca. Seneca was a powerhouse of the Roman Empire, a statesman, a dramatist, and a man who lived life at full throttle, even when the world around him was chaotic. But his greatest gift to us is a stinging, beautiful essay called On the Shortness of Life. Seneca's big idea was simple but jarring. It is not that we have a short space of time, but that we waste much of it. He argued that we aren't given a short life by nature. We make it short by living as if we're going to be here for 1,000 years. We push our happiness into a vague, misty future, a someday, that often never arrives. To help us stop waiting and start inhabiting our own lives, let's meet Harry, the calendar miller. Harry is 74 and a retired forensic accountant. For 40 years, Harry's life was a masterpiece of labor. He spent his career staring at spreadsheets and balancing everyone else's books, while telling his wife, Martha, later, honey, when I retire, we'll take that Mediterranean cruise. Later, when the house is paid off, I'll finally pick up those oil paints I bought in the 80s. Harry has lived his whole life in the waiting room. Now that he's actually retired, he spends his time checking his pulse and worrying if he has enough later left to do all the things he postponed. He's wealthy in his bank account, but he feels spiritually bankrupt, haunted by the ghost of the man he intended to become. That is, until he found a slim volume of Seneca's essays in a dusty hotel lobby and read a sentence that felt like a bucket of ice water to his soul. You are living as if destined to live forever. You squander time as if you drew from a full and abundant supply, though all the while that day which you bestow on some person or thing is perhaps your last. Harry sat on his porch, holding a faded brochure for a landscape painting class he had been staring at for 3 years. Maybe next spring, he muttered to himself, the same old mantra. I should probably finish organizing the garage first. A man's got to be practical, after all. He opened Seneca and read a passage that felt like a direct reprimand. No one will bring back your years, no one will restore you to yourself. Life will follow the path it began and will neither reverse nor check its course. It will make no noise to remind you of its swiftness. You are busy while life hurries on. Harry paused, his thumb tracing the worn edge of the book. He looked at his hands that had spent 40 years typing numbers and filing folders instead of painting sunsets or holding Martha's hand in a park. He realized he had been treating his time like a reckless billionaire who thinks he can never go broke. He spent hours killing time by watching news cycles that made him angry or arguing with total strangers on the internet about things that wouldn't matter in a week. The part of life we really live is small, Seneca whispered from the page, for all the rest of existence is not life, but merely time, a vast, empty space where we were physically present but mentally elsewhere. Good grief, Seneca, Harry chuckled, a sharp pang of realization hitting his chest. I've been an accountant my whole life, and I've been cooking the books on my own existence. I've been marking life as a pending transaction for decades while the clock was screaming overdrawn. He realized that later was just a polite, cowardly word for never. He stood up, decided that the garage could remain messy for another decade, and went to look for those oil paints. Seneca had a very pointed exercise for Harry to try. Check your accounts of your life. See how much time a creditor has taken, how much a neighbor, how much a client. See how little of yourself is left for you. Harry looked down at his phone. It was buzzing with a text from his nephew asking for free tax advice, followed by an email from a former colleague wanting just 10 minutes to pick his brain. Harry had always been a yes man. He gave his time away to anyone who asked, mistakenly believing that being busy for others meant he was being useful. But Seneca was blunt and unforgiving. People are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy. You let people walk off with your life as if it had no value. If a neighbor tried to walk off with my lawnmower, I'd be off this porch in a heartbeat, Harry mused, watching the cursor blink on his phone. But I let people walk off with my Tuesday afternoons without a second thought. I've been acting like a high-end security guard for my toaster and my television, but I've left the vault to my soul wide open for any passerby to loot. He realized that saying no to the trivial demands of the world was actually the only way to say yes to his own heart. He turned his phone to Do Not Disturb and set it face down. He didn't owe the world his sunset. He owed it to himself. For the first time in his life, Harry became stingy with his minutes, and strangely, for the first time, he started to feel like a truly wealthy man. For a long time, Harry had been quietly depressed about getting older. He saw his 70s as a fading light, a slow, inevitable slide into irrelevance. He felt like a vintage car that was finally running on fumes, waiting for the tow truck of fate. But Seneca, in his Letter on Old Age, had a completely different, almost celebratory take. Let us cherish and love old age, for it is full of pleasure if one knows how to use it. Fruits are most welcome when their season is passing, childhood's charms are at their best at its close. The end of the wine is what pleases the most, the part which has soaked up the most flavor. Harry looked at a bowl of peaches sitting on his kitchen table. The ones that were perfectly ripe, almost bursting with juice and fragrance, were the ones you had to eat right now. They were the sweetest specifically because they were the most fragile. Life is most delightful when it is on the downward slope, Seneca claimed, provided that slope is not a precipice. The pleasure which is most delayed is the one that often gives the most profound joy. You know, Seneca, Harry thought, I used to gulp down my days like cheap soda during my working years, barely tasting a thing. Now, I'm sipping them like a fine, aged scotch. He realized that being 74 meant he finally had the palate to actually taste his life. He didn't have the frantic distractions of youth, the crushing anxiety of building a career, or the exhausting pressure to impress people he didn't even like. He was in the golden hour of the play, where the stage light is the softest and the colors are the deepest. Old age wasn't the scraps of the meal, it was the decadent dessert he had been working for his whole life. Seneca had a special, biting name for people who were always planning for a future retirement while neglecting the present, the preoccupied. He mocked those who said, at 50 I will retire into leisure, at 60 I will give up my duties. What guarantee do you have of a longer life? Seneca asked with a piercing gaze. Is it not shameful to reserve for yourself only the remnants of life, and to set apart for good sense only that time which cannot be devoted to any other business? You are planning for a life that has already passed you by. Harry vividly remembered his 65th birthday party. Everyone had toasted to his leisure. But for the first 5 years of retirement, he had been just as preoccupied as before, obsessively checking his stock portfolio, micromanaging his properties, and worrying about every minor ache in his joints. He was still busy being retired. He was still living for a later that was supposed to be now. The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, Seneca warned. It hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. You are arranging what lies in fortune's control, and abandoning what lies in yours. Harry stood in front of his empty easel, the white canvas staring back at him like an accusing eye. His heart was racing. I'm actually scared to start, he realized. I'm afraid I'll be terrible at it. I'm waiting for the perfect day, the perfect lighting, the perfect mood. Then he heard Seneca's voice like a thunderclap, while we wait for life, life passes. The clock doesn't care about your perfectionism. Harry grabbed the brush. He didn't wait for a perfect idea or a surge of inspiration. He just dipped it in cobalt blue and made a messy, glorious, unapologetic streak across the canvas. It wasn't a masterpiece, but it was real. It was a mark made in the present tense. He wasn't planning to be a painter anymore. He was a painter. By the end of that week, Harry felt like he had lived more in 7 days than he had in the previous 7 years combined. He realized that time isn't a horizontal line you walk until it stops, it's a vertical depth you dive into. You make life long not by adding more years, but by adding more presence to the years you have. Seneca's final word on the matter was this: the life of the philosopher extends widely. He is not confined by the same limits as others. He alone is free from the laws of the human race, All ages serve him as if he were a god. He joins the past to the present and makes them one. Harry realized that by reading the wisdom of the past and living fully in the now, he was stretching his life across the centuries. He wasn't just Harry from Pennsylvania anymore, he was a student of the ages. He was connected to Seneca, to Marcus, to every soul who ever dared to stop the clock and truly inhabit their own skin. It is a small part of life we really live, Seneca concluded. But for the one who knows how to use it, life is not short, it is a sprawling, beautiful epic. Harry sat back in his chair and looked at his painting. It was a chaotic mess of colors, but to him, it looked like freedom. He wasn't waiting for the cruise. He wasn't waiting for the garage to be perfectly organized. He was 74 years old, and he was finally, for the very first time, not in a hurry. He had all the time in the world because he had finally decided to inhabit the only second he actually owned. My dear friends at Lingering Light, Harry Miller learned the hard way that the most expensive thing he ever bought was the word later. It cost him decades of joy. Seneca's message is a loud, loving wake-up call for all of us: you act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire. Don't wait for the perfect retirement. Don't wait until the house is painted or the kids are perfectly settled to finally be happy. The vault of your life is open right now, and the gold is pouring out. Don't let the thief named someday steal another minute of your treasure. I have a question for you tonight. What is one thing you've been putting off until later? A phone call you've been meaning to make? A hobby you're too old for? A walk in the park you're too busy for? What would happen if you did it tomorrow, or better yet, tonight? Share your no more waiting plans in the comments. Let's encourage each other to spend our time like the precious gold it is. And until our next gathering, stop waiting. Start being. Stay in the light, the urgent, beautiful, now light. Good night, dear friends. Don't waste a single second. Stay light.